I was just waiting for the late arrivals to get their earpieces in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Audio from the Hurricane Center. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mic level 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Everyone good? Thumbs up. You good? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Yes. If you guys want to get a little bit closer, just a little bit closer, so everybody can be on the shot. Okay, everybody can hear me? We're good? All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the National Hurricane Center. My name is Maria Torres. I'm the Public Affairs Officer for the Hurricane Center, and I'll be today's host for this event. So thank you all for being here. We really appreciate you guys coming to help us with the kickoff of the 2025 hurricane season for the Atlantic Basin. So our goal again here today is mainly just remind our communities the importance of preparedness, that this is the time to prepare. Don't wait until the last minute. It's the time to prepare is now. So definitely thank you so much for sharing that information to our audience and our communities out there. So for today's, the news conference is going to feature 10 to 15 minutes worth of remarks from our speakers, and then it's going to follow with a Q&A with afterwards from the audience. So our speakers for today is Dr. Michael Brennan. He is the National Hurricane Center Director, and Captain Aaron Hortensio, Commanding Officer of the U.S. Coast Guard District 7. So with that, please join me in welcoming Dr. Michael Brennan. So come on in.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you all for coming, and good morning. As Maria said, our primary goal here and throughout Hurricane Awareness Week, or what really becomes Hurricane Awareness Month in Miami in May, is to raise awareness that the 2025 hurricane season is right on our doorstep. Now is the time for communities all across the United States, all across the Atlantic Basin, East Pacific Basin, to prepare and get ready for what is expected to be a busy hurricane season. NOAA's seasonal forecast came out last week with a 60% chance of above normal activity across the Atlantic Basin. We're expecting 13 to 19 named storms of systems of at least tropical storm strength, 6 to 10 of those becoming hurricanes, 3 to 5 of those becoming major hurricanes. So we've been in a very active period, more or less, for about the last 30 years in the Atlantic. But it's really important to remind everybody in hurricane-prone areas that it doesn't really matter what the seasonal forecast says. There are risks of impacts every year. As we saw last year, across the entire basin in the Atlantic, we had 10 hurricane landfalls with significant devastating impacts all the way from the Lesser Antilles through the Caribbean to Central America, and then 5 U.S. hurricane landfalls all along the U.S. Gulf Coast from Texas to Louisiana to 3 in Florida. And it doesn't take a hurricane making landfall near you for there to be significant life-threatening hazards and impacts in your community. As we saw last year from the example of Hurricane Helene, there were 175 direct fatalities from Helene. The vast majority of them occurred in Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, well away from where Helene actually made landfall. There were 95 fatalities from freshwater flooding and landslides, over 60 fatalities from wind, 14 fatalities from storm surge. But it's noteworthy that those storm surge fatalities occurred in the Tampa Bay region, well south of where Helene actually made landfall, up in the Big Bend region. And it's important for communities along the East Coast to remember that some of the most impactful storms we have along the East Coast of the United States actually can come from hurricanes that make landfall along the Gulf Coast. And that's especially true for freshwater flooding, which is almost entirely independent of how strong a storm is from a wind perspective. And freshwater flooding has been responsible for the majority of direct U.S. tropical cyclone fatalities over the last 10 or so years. And it's important to remind everyone that post-storm safety is just as big of an issue as safety during the storm itself. In terms of overall fatalities, what we call indirect deaths, which largely occur after the storm, they've been almost as numerous as the direct fatalities over the last several years, and we'll touch a little bit on that a little later. But we've been in an extraordinary period of hurricane activity in the U.S. with 25 hurricane landfalls since 2017. So just about every part of the U.S. coastline from Texas through Florida up the East Coast to Maine has seen impacts during this period from either landfalling storms or the impacts of storms that have moved into that region. So for everyone in these hurricane-prone areas, it's really important now is a time to assess your risk. First and foremost, find out if you live in a storm surge evacuation zone, if you're a coastal resident. That is the key to your hurricane preparedness process and timeline and plan that you're going to put into place for yourself and your family. Because if you live in a storm surge evacuation zone or otherwise flood-prone area, you could be asked to leave your home in the event of a storm by your state or local officials. And if you are going to be asked, you need to know where you're going to go, how you're going to get there, what you're going to take with you. And it's important to remember that you only have to drive usually tens of miles, not hundreds of miles, to get out of those storm surge evacuation zones to a safe place where you can ride out the storm. And this is really important, especially for residents in Florida and along the Gulf Coast, because we can have these short fuse hurricane events that develop where we have systems form nearby, like Helene, like Milton, like Michael, like Laura. Many of the storms we've had that have been very impactful in the last few years have formed and made landfall within just 3 or 4 days. So it's important to have that hurricane plan in place for you and your family ahead of time. Strengthen your home. Know what your home's vulnerabilities are. If you live in a mobile home, you may not be able to safely shelter there during a tropical storm or hurricane. You may be asked to leave. Do an insurance checkup. Now is the time to make sure that your property and your possessions are properly insured. Think about flood insurance as an option for you and your family as well. And it's always important to have that disaster supply kit in place, not just for hurricanes, but for any disaster or hazard you or your family may face. Several days worth of non-perishable food, water, critical medicine, medical supplies that you might need, batteries, charging equipment, a battery-powered radio, ways to communicate with you and your family if you do face the aftermath of a significant storm, especially with long-term widespread power outages. It's also important, and the media here today is a big part of this, is to help people know where to find trusted information when a hurricane threatens. You want to really know now who are your local government officials, your local emergency managers who are going to be providing you information about how to keep you and your family safe when a storm threatens. Those officials that are going to be ordering evacuations and other safety preparedness information. So find them now. Follow them on social media. Know where to get that information on the web or online or through local media outlets. Follow the National Hurricane Center. We're here at hurricanes.gov. You can follow our social media. You're going to find the forecast and warning and hazard information that we put out. And you can also find information down to your local community scale from your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov. And the media is here. The media is an important part of our effort to get information to people. Find your trusted local media sources, broadcast meteorologists who know your community and know how to communicate that risk to you and your family. And most importantly, have multiple ways to get weather alerts when a storm threatens. You can enable wireless emergency alerts on your cell phone. You will get a WIA alert if a storm surge warning or hurricane warning is issued for your area. You can have smartphone apps that will warn you, NOAA weather radio, battery-powered radio, television. And it's also important to make sure that you can get alerts for flash flooding and tornadoes that can also occur during tropical cyclones. Some of the things that we're rolling out new for this hurricane season, we're going to have our experimental cone again this year that we first rolled out at the peak of last hurricane season, showing inland tropical storm and hurricane watches and warnings across the United States to better convey that inland wind risk. It was really great to have that during Helene last year, which was the deadliest hurricane from wind impacts in the United States since at least the 1960s, bringing wind hazards all the way inland into western North Carolina. We have on hurricanes.gov an experimental viewer of rip current risk information that's put out by local National Weather Service offices to help better convey the risk of rip currents for often distant tropical storms and hurricanes that can create dangerous ocean conditions. Rip currents have been one of the leading causes of fatalities in tropical storms and hurricanes in the United States over the last 10 years. And we're also going to work on improved messaging of post-storm heat risk. After Hurricane Beryl affected Texas last year, there were more than 15 heat-related fatalities. Heat after an event with power outages, no air conditioning, has become an increasing source of fatalities in tropical storms and hurricanes. So we'll be working on post-storm heat messaging to look for areas where there is that risk of excessive heat overlaid with areas that could experience long-duration power outages. I also want to mention we are going to be pushing out our lead time to get information out to the public and to emergency managers for dangerous systems that are developing near land, like Helene. We're going to be pushing some of that pre-formation forecast and hazard information out to as much as 72 hours in advance of when a storm makes landfall this year, when we have high confidence of those significant impacts. So after my overview, I want to turn it over to Captain Ortenzio. He is the Chief of Incident Management at U.S. Coast Guard District 7 here in Miami, responsible for a variety of activities, including search and rescue, and just overall maritime safety from Florida through the Caribbean. They are a great partner of ours, and we provide them a lot of information to help them with their life-saving mission at sea, search and rescue, but not just at sea, but also on land after significant hurricane events. Captain Ortenzio is going to become the commanding officer of U.S. Coast Guard Station Miami next month, and invite him up here to make some remarks. So.
Good morning. My name is Aaron Ortenzio, as Mike passed. So with hurricane season upon us, the big things, and I think Mike already kind of hit on a lot of it, is preparedness and awareness. Being prepared, and when we're talking about the maritime environment, especially in the southeast United States, a lot of live-aboard vessels, the individuals need to have a plan of a safe haven for their boat, how they're going to moor their boat correctly, and then not riding the storm out on their boat is preferred. These dangerous storms, oftentimes the storm surge is what people underestimate, and riding a storm out on a vessel with a 20-foot storm surge is a recipe for disaster. Also, with things to note with the Coast Guard, port closure information. There's a centralized website now for port information. It's navcen.uscg.gov. So that's navcen.uscg.gov. And this is the single point for information on port status. And obviously with the Coast Guard, working in conjunction with our partners at the National Hurricane Center, we take the information on real-time basis. So we actually embed the National Hurricane Center forecasts into our planning processes as we make decisions on port closures, moving our resources. So for the Coast Guard, we need to have our ships out of harm's way so they could return back to help reconstitute the ports and save lives. So we really leverage the forecast team here to help us make those decisions 5 to 7 days ahead of time. Aviation, we have a lot more luxury of time with the aircraft being able to fly out, so usually 24 hours. We'll wait to see what the forecast looks like to where we're going to stage our forces. But mainly also post-storm recovery. Oftentimes the aids of navigation will be destroyed, there'll be a lot of debris, or a vessel may have sustained a lot of damage during the storm. So we advise individuals to take precautions prior to getting back underway. But an overarching goal of the Coast Guard is to save lives and protect commerce as we weather these storms at a high frequency in recent years. So standing by for any questions at this time. I'll turn it over to Maria.
All right, no, thank you so much for both your remarks. So yeah, before we begin, so please state your name and your station that you're affiliated with and who you're going to be directing your question to. All right, so with that, I'll go ahead and start taking questions. Oh, yeah, Seth. Yeah.
Evan Brown, Fox News. I guess for the captain, but it could be for either of you. This September will be 10 years since the sinking of El Faro. This concerns, I guess, both of you and your outfits here. That was a catastrophe that I think a lot of people felt could have been avoided. What do we know better, and that involves communication with private, commercial shipping, but how do we impress upon them, don't go near the storm, even though your boat is really, really, really big? It's still not a good idea. I'm going to start.
Yeah.
Well, from a search and rescue preparedness, obviously one of the things that have changed in the last 10 years is the ability of internet service underway. So with the access to information, decision making should be improved from a weather forecasting perspective. As far as AI, also there's a system of AIS where we track vessels as they move in. And you could actually see the National Hurricane Center has a slide that they could show is when their forecasts go out, it shows the AIS traffic heeding the call of where the storm is. And I would say based on the enhanced messaging and the lessons learned from the El Faro case, we're seeing a lot greater compliance and respect for the weather forecast throughout the maritime community. And I don't know if they have that slide available, but it's really powerful to see how those vessel tracks change as the forecast models are going out.
How are those available, A, to the mariners, and also just the general public? Is it on a website that's easily viewable?
Are you talking about the weather forecast?
No,
or
the graphics that you're...
Well, the AIS is something that AIS is a system in which vessels of greater than 65 feet that are commercial vessels have, it's a transponder that broadcasts their position. And so there's a system that monitors that. And so this is just an after action look back of, hey, here's when the weather came out, here's where all these vessels were going. I think there's a depiction of I think it was Beryl from last year that was going into Texas, and it showed all the vessels coming out and then all of them diverting south of the track, and then as the storm passed, them coming back in. So that, from a SAR, a search and rescue professional standpoint, that makes me very happy to see individuals heeding that information, changing their course, and then once it's safe to return back to their initial course and return to commerce, they're doing that. So I think there is a lot of lessons, not only in the shipping industry, but throughout the maritime community from the El Faro, that we are seeing changes in how behaviors in the face of storms.
Thomas Murphy, Channel 7 WSVN. We put a lot of people down in the Keys with all the new construction and everything. Is there any kind of a change of a contingency plan to get them out when the storms start coming in?
For the U.S. Coast,
Either one.
for either one, I think.
I could start. I mean, I can't speak to exactly what plans Monroe County has, but certainly we provide, the lead time and information that they need to make, evacuation decisions based on storm surge and other risks that get communicated to them through the local National Weather Service office in Key West. So, we provide the storm surge risk mapping that gives them an idea of what areas are vulnerable to storm surge within the Keys and helps them make their evacuation plans. But I can't speak directly to what their plans may be at the moment.
Right, because there's a lot more houses down there within the past 2 or 3 years, but, the roads are still the same size.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a trend we see along coastal populations continue to increase. So even as forecasts get better, information gets better, there's still as much, if not more, vulnerability with people continuing to move into hurricane-prone areas, and that's, I think the Keys are no exception there.
Is there anyone who could address the bridges, like in mine, bridges going up and down? Would that be you, sir?
Well, I could address the drawbridge. So for awareness, anytime winds are in excess of 39 miles per hour, the drawbridges are fixed down. So it pertains more to the maritime community. If you need to move your vessel and you're waiting and those winds pick up, your vessel is not going to be able to get through that drawbridge because it's going to be in a lockdown position. So that goes back to the awareness and preparedness piece, is if you have a high sail area vessel, a sailboat, or a larger craft, and you need to move it to a safe haven, or you need to make sure you're doing that well in advance to those winds increasing. So oftentimes that's probably at least 48 hours out. You should be thinking about moving your boat to a inland position if it involves transiting through drawbridge areas.
Okay. I know, Glenn, you had some.
I did, yeah.
Go for it.
Brennan, you really helped fill a social media void from the National Hurricane Center over the past couple of years. I mean, your talkbacks last year, your YouTube videos, what is the feedback been on all of that?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think overall it's been really positive. I think it's important for us to have an avenue to get our message out. We're trying to expand our reach. For many, many years, we've had the media pool, but we know people consume information in much different ways now. And doing live streams and other posts on social media allow us to get our information out there sooner. The media pool used to be kind of tied to the hurricane watch warning phase. We've got a lot more information. We can provide people a lot more lead time now. So the live streams, I know, get picked up by media, and it helps us sort of cut through some of the noise in the community and get one of those trusted voices out there. And it also provides talking points and information that the rest of the media and emergency management community can then amplify from our perspective.
How about from the general public? I have a lot of friends who aren't meteorologists.
Yeah.
Who really enjoy your videos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think that's the goal, is to kind of reach that entire community. The general public, we know people see them on Facebook or YouTube. And again, it's important to have that authoritative information out there about the storm. Sometimes it's to raise awareness, sometimes it's to prevent, sort of incredible or not credible information from getting out there that can kind of keep people at a better level of readiness and understand what the threat is or what it isn't at the time. Yeah.
I have a question. It's for Mike. I'm Greg Allen from NPR. I wonder if, I know you in the past have done a lot of training with emergency managers. I want to ask you about what's happened this year on that.
Sure.
But it's not just about coastal areas now, as we know, what you're discussing. I mean, how do you deal with people in the mountains of North Carolina and Georgia? I mean, those people, do they get training? Do they have the connection that you want to have with them to understand the warnings?
Yeah, we hosted 3 week-long training courses here back in January and February for coastal emergency managers that are sponsored by FEMA. So we trained over 60 EMs here for week-long courses on hurricane hazards, tools that we provide, how to use that information to help make evacuation decisions, largely focused on storm surge. There is a FEMA-sponsored course that focuses on inland hurricane risk, primarily on rainfall flooding. I don't know the exact nature of those. We're not as directly involved with those. They tend to focus more on the local National Weather Service offices in the FEMA regions. But it's a great point, and it really goes back to what I said about hurricanes can have significant inland impacts. Helene was the most impactful hurricane to affect the continental United States since Katrina in terms of fatalities, in terms of damage. And it's important to get that message out to inland communities, especially in flood-prone areas, because that freshwater flooding has been such a significant source of fatalities in recent years. Those types of rainfall events do occur. I mean, we can go back and look at the aftermath of Ida up into the New York area from a storm that made landfall along the Gulf Coast with catastrophic urban flooding in the New York City metro area. We had Harvey in southeast Texas in 2017. So we've seen multiple of these catastrophic level flooding events. I think Helene was noteworthy for the scale at which it occurred on. It was relatively well forecast, but again, trying to communicate rainfall totals and get that information to people in a way that they know what's going to happen in their community is really important, and being able to visualize those impacts. And the National Weather Service is working on rolling out flood inundation mapping across the country. It's rolling out kind of state by state or region by region, but that will provide an impact, a visual of the footprint of the flooding in those communities and along rivers.
It just seems like it's a more difficult messaging for those inland communities, especially if you're in the mountains.
Yeah.
Where to evacuate to.
Yeah.
Especially for us here in Florida, it seems in retrospect, we just go inland. It's not so, that's not the case in those areas.
Yeah, there aren't sort of large-scale, community-scale evacuation plans in place in inland areas. To get there for storm surge, it's taken 40 or 50 or 60 years of, go all the way back to Camille, and the investment in storm surge modeling and evacuation zones and planning. And that's just for coastal areas. To expand that to inland areas where it can flood anywhere it can rain, or even downstream of anywhere it can rain. So it's a much bigger effort that's going to require sustained investment. And there is work starting to happen in that space, but as you mentioned, it's a much larger problem in terms of scale and vulnerability.
Okay, one more question. Yeah, Maria Fernando with Lawyers. On the topic of FEMA,
Yeah.
FEMA said it wasn't ready for this hurricane season because of, lack of funding and layoffs. How are you guys preparing for this upcoming season with FEMA saying that they're not ready?
Well, we're ready here. That's what I can speak to, is directly the readiness of us and our staff here at the National Hurricane Center. We have 2 FEMA liaisons as part of the hurricane liaison team that work here in the building with us, and they are our conduit to the emergency management community at the federal, state, and local level, and we're ready to meet the needs of the EM community across the country as they come up this hurricane season, just as we always are.
So with that, thank you so much. That concludes the briefing, but thank you guys so much for coming. And if you have any other questions or any interview scheduled for the rest of now into the afternoon, please come to me and I'll assist you with that, okay? Thank you so much. All right, thank you.
Have you done these before? Or? First one. You're pretty good.
Are you? So I don't know. Are you familiar with AI?
Not really, but yeah, I was just curious if you thought, maybe misunderstood. Would you like me to
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, well, you can see it.
Is that John?
Oh, okay, so, okay, I can go ahead if you want. Yeah, that's fine, that's no problem.
Okay. Oh, no worries. And Aaron's right. It's an
across the Atlantic. You can see all the ships. Hurricane comes
It's not like the
through.
flight traffic.
So what it was, this is a tracking one that you put on the map up here, but this is actually more of an internal. So.
Well, it's the same thing, marinetraffic.com, there's another website. And so this is for Hurricane Milton, from its formation in San all the way until it crosses Florida. You can see the ships all getting out of the way. And it's a beautiful.